Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is January 9th, 2025, and I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Greg Lay.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Good evening.
And the returning Mr. John Lindemann.
Happy New Year, James.
Happy New Year, John. John, you know what episode this is?
Let's see. Is this 909?
Nope.
Okay. Fair enough.
I thought you might make a second guess. 908.
Okay.
I would ask if you know what we talked about, but I'm guessing not. Last week, you will appreciate, I went on like a 9.5-minute rant about why the eShop is unfixable. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
John was right. You were so sure of yourself, I had to check. But John, it is 909.
There you go.
Oh, shit, you're right. God damn it. Last week was 908. Cool. Good start. Good start by me. I've had a really bad week. I've had a really shitty week. So what's fine. I apologize, John. You did a good job.
Thanks.
Anyway, yeah. New business. We're gonna do it in the second segment. We're kind of light on new business, as I alluded to. I've been dealing with some failures of public infrastructure. John, you were traveling, and then the rest of us, I don't know, but just didn't have time to play. It's fine. We'll get to that in the next segment. But we're gonna do some listener mail first. But I'm about to interrupt myself before I interrupt myself because Nintendo dropped a Xenoblade X trailer today on the 9th of January, as we said earlier. They just posted on social media. It's 3.5 minutes long. It shows off a bunch of stuff from the game as we originally saw it, but we got a hint of some of this new story content. One of the things we saw was a blade. That blade is in the art book, the Xenoblade X art book that came out alongside the Wii U release, but that one was not in the game. Not a blade, excuse me, a scale. And it is capable of transforming into a fucking fighter plane and flying. That's really neat. But it had a pilot in the art book called the Knight, and it was a person wearing like a modern, like a space age suit of armor. It has been replaced by this weird bulbous head thing that we never see its face. Looks a little bit like I don't even know if there's anything to compare it to. It's like a big spherical head. It's a small body, white suit. It's weird. It's a weird looking thing. That was it. We got a quick shot of it. We're done. We got to see another Chlorian, that's Celica's race. We only see one of them in the whole game. She also was apparently in the art book as just cut content. So it looks like we're seeing some of the cut content. We had heard that was some of the stuff they were adding. But if you remember way back when we played Xenoblade X and when we started talking about games getting ported to Switch, I said, I swear to God, if they add an ending to this fucking game, I'm going to be so mad. The trailer highly indicates a period of content that would only make sense in the post-game. There is a sequence in the trailer that would only make sense in the context of it being not just post-game, but like significant story components, possibly including going to a new area. So, that's cool. I'm not upset I'm going to have to play this game again. Not in the slightest. Why do you ask? But at the same time, I'm excited to play this game again. It looks like they've put the combo system on screen. Xenoblade X has a particularly complicated combo system. Xenoblade 2 also is relatively complicated. And 3, I think, is a simplified version of 2. Where it's like stun, topple, break, etc. Xenoblade X has the overdrive system, which you can in theory change so you never leave it, and the number just keeps going up. This one actually it looks like they put things on the HUD to kind of give you an idea of what your options are with that system. It's because it's hard. It's hard to get it right. The other thing that we saw is the transitioning between the map and the game world, which originally, of course, those were on two separate screens if you played it on Wii U with the gamepad and TV. It looks pretty seamless. So, it probably won't be as convenient, but Greg, I mean, you played it just on the gamepad, so.
Yeah, but a lot of it, was just on the gamepad, and a couple of things with that. I mean, first of all, it seems like you're getting a more zoomed out version of the map. You see more of the kind of hex, the hexagonal kind of grid at once, which is, not a shock because, of course, Wii U on the gamepad, you were talking about essentially a 480 resolution.
Right.
So, now, you'll be able to at least in theory, sometimes Xenoblade resolutions on Switch
are dubious.
As high as 480. For the map screen, I think they can manage it. But also, like, with the UI and stuff, like, it seems like they've revamped that. The fonts, have been kind of reworked, because again, they were really quite small on Wii U, the lettering and stuff in the UI, and especially if you were doing off TV play, it wasn't that legible all the time. So it seems like, just like they've revamped the UI, and it looks kind of. Again, it's been a while, and I don't know how, like, maybe it wasn't as much of a problem if you was playing on TV most of the time, but it seems like it should be, kind of clearer experience.
I did think of something that the new pilot they showed. It kind of looks like Marvin the android from the movie adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a big white spherical head on a body. Yeah, it does look nice. Like, that's part of the reason I'm excited to play it. Cause the text, especially on the gamepad, the text was dubious might be the right word. Like, is that actually readable? Is that human interactable? It looks like they're also highlighting where items that you need for quests are even more explicitly, which it was actually pretty good in Xenoblade X. There was a pulse you could send out, and it would give you a line that literally went over the terrain to get to it. So I don't know that needed a lot, but that does tell me that they're putting a lot of thought into quality of life functionality. So it might make this game much more playable than its predecessor, its original version.
And you got to
nice.
think again. I mean, you kind of talked about cut content, but you probably think, there might have been a pass or so that they could have done over some of the stuff that's like, to make things clearer to the player or to make things convenient that they probably just didn't have time to do with Wii. Because, I mean, it was way too late to be able to find that much of an audience on Wii U as it was. If you were gonna, take the extra time that, say, for instance, something like Tears of the Kingdom got, on that, then, I mean, the Wii U would have been entirely dead by then, wouldn't it? So, it's kind of probably getting some of that kind of, extra care and attention that, it didn't get the first time round. And then some of the other stuff is probably just going to be lessons learned from making, further Xenoblade games after it. That even though they are different structurally and in other ways, there's still going to be relevant experience there, especially with stuff like, the UI and all the player experience that they'll be able to put in. So, I mean, you said, I wouldn't say my memories of it in that regard are especially bad, but I don't doubt that there's room for improvement, that it looks like they're taking up.
Yeah. It's, it was one of those trailers where, like, we talked about this with the first trailer for the remake, where it was very clear they were messaging people who played the game like, no, there's stuff here you're going to want to see. They were really explicit about it this time. Like, the stuff, I would say the last 30 seconds of the trailer was all content that was like, no, this is new.
Oh yeah, well, they begin with a particular image for the informed that's like, okay, this means we're looking at stuff that is new, essentially. This is the beginning of the new part of the trailer, as it were. And then, so even if you haven't got, I wouldn't say I have the most, like, crystal clear image in my head of the whole game, as it has been nearly 10 years at this point. That was a very sort of clear sort of indicator, like, you might want to pay special attention to what comes next, because, this is the kind of fresh stuff. I don't know how many people it is that we're dealing with that actually played it, owned it at all, played it to the end, remember enough that image to have the intended meaning of like, okay, guys, pay attention now because it's the new stuff. But they sure did that for those of us who qualify.
I do like that it's basically like a third of the trailer is just Elma's intro speech she gives you in the game when you first start. And then it's basically, you see some more of the stuff like the walk to the new LA. And then basically it just jumps to, and here's some post-game shit. It's such a weird trailer. It really is like telegraphing like the first half of the trailer is, here's to people who've never played this game. And maybe don't even know it exists. Because, I mean, that's entirely achievable, a late stage Wii U game. That not only do people who like Xenoblade never played it, maybe don't even know about it. Or they know about it in the most vague sense. But yeah, then it's like, and for those of you who do know it, hey, here's something for you. Yeah, I'm very interested in playing this game now. Like they got me with this one. Like I was still like, maybe I won't, but yeah, they got me now. They win. You win, Nintendo. You're gonna make me play this 100-fucking-hour game for the second time. You fucking win. I'm gonna go through the water treatment plant now, jaded by my own life. That's cool. And go through that fucked up shit another time. I really hope we got your idea of maybe they'll just change it to rave at the water treatment plant. Is really.
Well, you gotta mix it up. You gotta have something good happen there.
Or maybe they add a couple quests like, oh, it's the party. That's fine. I like going here. Then they just play the regular quest afterwards. But this time we added children. There's no children on Mira. There were not anymore. Yeah, we were talking about it in the NWR Discord, which I strongly encourage people like actually go check out. There's basically a folder for Xenoblade sickos. And we were talking about it, and I realized there are people who played this game and never met characters that I actually have like a deep personal connection with. Like I really like that character. Like they just never even met that. Like that's the level of expansiveness this game has. When we did our retroactive, our whatever we called it,
spoiler cast, whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah, there is a race that we talked about that somebody told me in there. I never even encountered that race. Like, there's an entire fucking race that they just didn't find. I think it might have been the second race of prone, or prone. I don't know how you pronounce it. The ones that lived in the forest. Yeah, like this game is massive. I do wonder if it'll be successful. Like, it's visually looks quite nice. I always thought the art style was really interesting, but the Wii U just couldn't always handle it. So yeah, if it does well, what do they do? Do they make a second one? Do they make a Xenoblade X 2? They've got to be thinking about it, right?
They have to be. It's just
I think so. Yeah.
You know, I mean, they've done it with the main Xenoblade. You know,
and there was enough of a finality about like Xenoblade 3 and the DLC that kind of felt like almost, to just do another one of those next, wouldn't feel right. Now, you're kind of mixing up like narrative threads with like gameplay styles and stuff like that. Those don't necessarily go together, but it did kind of feel apt for like, maybe you're going to do something more substantially different again. For the first time, since Xenoblade X, perhaps, that again, it's kind of loose, but it would feel appropriate enough. And also just the opportunity, to do it on, substantially, and it really would be at that point substantially superior kind of hardware than what they had, backward crafting. Obviously this version is probably going to have some nice improvements on Switch and stuff, but ultimately,
we've seen it.
the game was crafted for Wii U, more than 10 years ago, essentially, when they were developing it. So, if you were doing a follow-up and as he said, the expansiveness of the game was then, and I think perhaps you can only speculate about this, but for people who would be playing it for the first time here in the second half of the 2020s that we've entered now,
yes.
I think it would still be, kind of impressive how expansive it is even then. But you think, imagine what you could make, with more capable hardware.
Well, and the technology that's been developed by them and their partners making Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, like, go back and Xenoblade X technology is in those games. Well, now we're 3 revisions down the road. What could they build now with what they learned making those? And I mean, imagine if you could navigate the world in a more Link style way on foot, so you can actually climb vertical surfaces, but with limitations, obviously. Like Breath of the Wild had a lot of limitations on that space. Tears of the Kingdom obviously obviated those with the ability to build stuff. But like, if you still had the whole scale problem of like, I need to get up there. Well, I can't climb that much, but rather than trying to goat jump your way up the side of a mountain to stick it in the eye of the developers, which is something that I did. Like, no, you can climb. We took the climbing mechanics. We slapped it in there. Done. We did it. Some basic stuff, like just lift a couple ideas from that and apply it to that same rubric. And really, like, Tears of the Kingdom kind of already does, because in Tears of the Kingdom, you do get a fucking mech. It's just not as sophisticated as the mechs from Xenoblade X. Like, swap out the mech you get in that game, or the things you can build with Skells. And that's probably a pretty compelling game right out of the gate. So yeah, like, this is, you're right. Like, rather than making Xenoblade 4, making a Xenoblade X2 would not be, would I think might be good for creativity, because I think a lot of the lessons they learned and ideas they developed and thoughts that they, generated from Xenoblade X contributed to the success of Tears of the Kingdom. So being able to do that exercise again and potentially generate new ideas that could feed back into other games, not necessarily other Zelda games or other Xenoblade games, but somewhere in the Nintendo ecosystem, germinate new ideas and new thought processes, I think would be a beneficial exercise for everybody. And also just some variety. And like I said, we know Monolith's working on another game because they've been hiring for it for like 1 million years. But hey, I'm excited to play this, and you got to figure there's a reason they're putting this much investment in it rather than just a port. Because, like, the Donkey Kong Country Returns. This is the 3rd time this game's come out, right?
Yep.
Yes, but it's not in stereoscopic 3D this time, so I don't know how that changes how we consider the nature of this particular return.
It's the 2DS of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like, it's a much more straightforward port. Yeah, it's an HD, but like, it is very much, this game is filling a slot on the schedule. It feels like Xenoblade X, a game that was played by substantially less people with Donkey Kong Country Returns. Feels like it's getting a lot of investment. So they put some value in it. And it could just be, hey, we really feel like this game deserved better and deserved to sell more, and it's got enough juice on its own, but it's been so long now that we really had to put some work to it. And it looks like they did, so I'm excited. I'm excited to play this fucking game for the second time. I'm glad I didn't pick it up and play it like 1.5 years ago when I was just giving up. But hey. All right, John, are you going to play it again?
Yes, I will. Question is when, because I mean, Monster Hunter Wilds is coming out prior to this, about a month prior. So yeah.
March, April, May is usually relatively quiet, so there could be some time to slip in there. But like we keep emphasizing, this is a unfathomably expansive game.
It's a large game. Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's like I'd like to get, probably before I tackle it, I would like to get Monster Hunter Wilds to the point where I just go through the main campaign and I'm just sitting there grinding on something, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
I need armor or whatever.
And it's not just that the world is big, which it is. It's that stuff is hidden fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And like, you never know what the thing you uncover is gonna unlock. Like, it might unlock 9 quests.
Yep.
Like, you might just meet a guy and he joins the party and suddenly he's got 9 quests and you're like, oh shit, I've just unlocked like 6 hours of content because I wandered into this fucking cave.
Yeah, I mean, this was the only game that I played for 3 weeks straight. Literally, where like I wasn't doing anything but playing this game. I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything. I had nothing but free time. And this game took me 3 weeks to beat.
Yeah. Because it came out right for the holidays.
Yep. And I played it every day for probably about at least 7 hours a day.
Same. And it became my job for 2 weeks.
Yeah. It was my job for 3 weeks. I played the whole damn thing.
It was like, it was ridiculous. And yeah, because we talked about it during the spoiler cast where I would just see John sign on. And I'm sure you were seeing the same thing. You'd see me sign on.
Yeah.
And then just all day, just like John's popping up in the corner. Burn, 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 burn.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I guess he took a bathroom break and I was back.
Yep. I do like 4 hours on, then take a break, and then come back and play another 4 hours, and then go to bed. And then wake up and do it all over again.
It was ridiculous. I think I had like a 16-hour session one day. Like, I had charged the gamepad 3 times that day.
Yeah, like on the weekends.
Absurd.
On the weekends, it was ridiculous. I'd play for like 12 hours straight.
I think I found almost everything. And note I say almost. There is a little bit of content I know I didn't find.
Yeah, the only thing I didn't do any of the affinity stuff. I didn't really get too deep
I did a lot of it, but
yeah.
I didn't do everybody's. I did about 5 characters.
Yeah.
I didn't do HBs. I remember that because he was boring. I didn't do L's because he's weird and creepy. I did Celica's because she has a cool song that I like. Which I think I made Greg pick as the ending music one time. But yeah, like if they're adding more fucking characters with more affinity quests, like, no, it's not possible to see them all. I hope that's one thing that they did. They make the affinity quests easier to build up, or easier to build up affinity with them, so you can go do the quest. Because a lot of times I just have to go grind because these characters I had never worked with them, so I had no affinity with them. But to unlock their quest, you have to level that up, and their quests give a lot of color to the world because they're in different divisions of the organization. So like, you get a perspective on what that division is doing right now. You get a perspective on their personal problem, and you get some insight into why the people who were picked for the trip to Mira were picked. They talk about it in this trailer where there's like, in the life hold, there's, millions and millions of people waiting for us. But the crew of the ship, the people who were supposed to be there to settle before they brought everybody out of the life hole, because you wouldn't want to just like let everybody out at one time. They're the ones that were picked for this mission for a reason. And so like, getting to experience their affinity quest kind of gives you more insight on why these individuals are picked. Like, why did they fucking pick someone named Murderous to be like a super important cog in the machine? And you do actually get some insight on that when you do her affinity quest, but it's very stupid. Yeah, so that's interesting. No direct though. They just sort of dropped it on the internet and called it a day. So, the directs continue unannounced, undirected.
Yeah. Well, my thinking is that like if they were to do a direct, everyone would just be bitching that it's not about the Switch 2.
That's what I was going to say.
They can't do one at this point. Like they just can't.
Right. Like I was just going to say, oh well, they're saving the direct for the Switch 2 announcement, right?
The successor announcement, yeah, probably. But like at the same time, people are going to bitch about if they post it on Twitter and it's not the successor to the Switch. People are just going to bitch.
Yeah. At this point, you kind of think you got to do, if you're doing a successor announcement, that's got to be a standalone thing, right? You're not going to do that as part of a general direct that has a bunch of other stuff in it, because it just consume everything out. Whatever objectives you had for the other stuff will get demolished, right? So that's got to be its own thing. And maybe, that'll have to come first before other directs. And I mean, they didn't really, the DK, like, so that's a week away. And then, this, X Definitive Edition, that's like, we're 2 months plus away. So they've got plenty of time to ramp that up. I guess it's just makes some sort of sense to just say, well, now that we're on the other side of the turn of the year and all that, just like, let's, keep prodding people, reminding people this is coming, showing a little bit more, but still presumably with quite a bit more to show still. And again, probably bet for the best. Don't assume too much about how many people know about this, how much they know about it, like because again, it was not experienced by many people.
Yeah. I'm excited for that more than anything. People get a chance to experience this game because this game is kind of fucking amazing. I'm surprised how much I remember, but then again, I remember the cosmology of Xenoblade 2. And the cosmology of that universe is absolutely fucking nonsense. Even if you remove the part that ties it to Xenoblade 1. Even if you remove the creator event. If you just focus on the cosmology of the reality he created, that's fucked up in its own way. Blades grow until they become whatever the name for the continents were, I can't remember.
The Titans, right?
The Titans, yeah. And then they die and submerge into the cloud and potentially become core crystals. It's like, what? The fuck is this? It's weird. So that's cool. We're gonna do a little bit of email. I know we said we're gonna do email, then I said I was gonna interrupt myself, and I did. So we're gonna do a little bit of email. And John, since you've been out for a little while, I've put some emails in the chat, and I'd like you to read the first one from Reg McFly.
All right, I can do that.
Cool.
Reg McFly writes, Dear RFN, unlike normal human beings who can deal with the here and now, I'm sitting here writing this email with Switch 2 on the brain. However, rather than the when it will be announced, I'm really excited about the how. I would argue the reveal of the original Switch from the 3-minute sizzle lifestyle rooftop party video to the actual on-stage deep dive was very smart. The questions I have are, 1. Do you think they will replicate the reveal and deep dive concept from Switch 1? 2. If they do, what will the sizzle reel be? Would it be emphasizing more of the same, as it is widely expected Switch 2 will be very iterative? Or do you think they go to town on any differences that the system has, as minor as they may be? How do you think it should best be done? Love the pony.
I think it will be announced as part of a tie-in to the UFL. I think it'll be the UFL kickoff week, and they're gonna have The Rock come out, and he's gonna be holding it in his pocket on his oversized Dan Flasher shirts, and he's gonna pull one out. John, did you notice he was wearing the exact same shirt at Raw as he wore at NXT the next day? Does he only have one of these hideous silk shirts? What is up with that, man?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I think
he's got a Seth Brundle wardrobe full of all of the same one.
It really does feel like the Dan Flasher skit at this point. This is the most complicated pattern on any shirt available. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
He's gonna drink some of his tequila as he pulls it out. He's gonna show it to the camera. He's gonna point to it, and then he's gonna do his Maui laugh, and that's gonna be the announcement. No, it's good. I mean, they don't need the big, expansive announcement, the thing that they had as part of the Phase 2. Like, they had the trailer. That was in November, because before I went to Japan.
Yeah, it was some considerable, and then Switchmas that was a January thing. In 17. So months apart, and that's the thing. You feel like it's a lot more likely that it'll happen faster in this case,
right?
You're right, because again, you've got a different set of circumstances. I mean, this Reg McFly said this a fair bit ago, probably a couple of months ago, something like that. I think this email came from. So, there was with doing it. We're in the midst of all this. Every accessory maker seemingly has something that is supposed to work with Switch 2. Or whatever they think it's going to be called, and it's so on and so forth. But I guess the point about some of this, I have no idea. I can't discern what's legit and not out of all of this stuff. But I guess the thing that's not surprising about it is the fact that on this occasion, the announcement is much more likely to be closer to the launch than it was the last time. Because the thing with last time was the Wii U had been a dead duck for years before they were, ready to announce what the Switch was going to be, or what the NX was going to be, because that was the code name before, they actually revealed the Switch name itself. And so, there was nothing to cannibalize there. They couldn't, they could, oh no, we might sell, fewer copies of Ultra Smash, or we might not sell as many like 2DS XLs, or I mean, they weren't going to be worried about stuff like that. Whereas this time, they're still selling yes, it's slowed, of course it has, Switch sales and software sales with it and stuff, but they're still selling a lot of them. And that's still, big money, and they've still got projections that they've already revised down once, so they're trying their best to hit the, as close as they possibly can with those. And then it's like, no, we're not going to reveal something before we have to and make those projections harder to hit and cost ourselves money. So it's like, that's how this, is very, very different from what it was in 16-17. And therefore, we probably should expect a compressed timeline. And by extension, makes it a bit less likely that you get that kind of like, okay, we kind of need to give people like a concept trailer, as was mentioned with that sort of the 3-minute thing with the rooftop party, before we get down to the nitty gritty, the actual details of it. You kind of feel like this will be more of a, when it does happen, it's going to be more of a hybrid thing, right? It's going to be, some aspects of a concept trailer in terms of, okay, this is the successor to the Switch. What does that actually mean in this case? And then also some of the more detailed stuff in terms of what's going to be the software lineup and things like that. Those are more likely to go together now.
Yes. And I don't think there's going to need to be as much, like, to your point, there's not going to need to be as much explanatory, like, here's why we're doing this, here's what this means, here's how we got way too much time on the Joy-Cons. Like, look how they click in, here's the ice demo, all that shit. We're not gonna need all that. Like, yeah, there's gonna be some features that are different, but not dramatically so in such a way that it's gonna require the expansive level of hardware talk that its predecessor did. Like, that's just not going to be part of the story at this point.
Do they still do like any kind of not literally Iwata asks, but like developer interviews and stuff, or like talking to
they have done. I think Super Mario Brothers Wonder, for instance, had quite an extensive one.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so I could see the people who worked on the hardware explaining their thing. Because it's their moment, of glory, I guess. Like, the new hardware is being revealed, so they deserve at least that. But, it might not be a big presentation. It might be more like, okay, if any nerds want to know what we were thinking when we were designing this thing, here's the interview,
Yeah. Here's what, like, I do think there's going to be some new features that merit some discussion, but I mean, it's going to be more like when a new version of a cell phone gets, like a flagship phone gets announced, where they're like, here's the key feature that we're showing off this time. That the thing that, the capability that its predecessor didn't have that this one now does. That kind of stuff. But they don't need to explain the concept anymore. That's set. I think it's going to be more game focused. Although it wasn't not game focused. Like the Switchmas had a number of games that were shown. But it also had, and we've joked about it, Suda coming out there and going off script to talk about wrestling.
And just like aspirational, like, I would like to do something on this at some point.
Yeah, like that. They won't need to do that this time. Like that.
No, you wouldn't think so. For me, I think it's got. I mean, this isn't necessarily what they're going to do, but you would hope, based on just their kind of assessment of the situation. I feel it's got to be very software driven. I mean,
Yes.
for as much as is out there about like hardware leaks and stuff, I mean, it's pretty much as you want to know by the sound of it at this point, which some people very definitely have wanted to know and have gone to absurd lengths to try and find out, that make the good old days of people tracking sports teams' owners' airplanes to discern which head coach they're going to hire seem quaint and not creepy by comparison. But the fact is, like, I don't think it's really, like, however much, like, I not knowing all the specifics of the hardware, as apparently some people do, I don't think that's necessarily going to be like the tip of the spear here. It's really got to be the games. It's got to be, this is why you buy this thing, is because you play this game on it, not for the sake of the hardware itself. I can't imagine the hardware itself is going to be different enough or, uniquely kind of capable in some odd ways enough to kind of sell it on that basis. I think it's got to be, we've got this killer lineup of games that's going to be coming out for it. Obviously I doubt they'll be showing games way into the future or anything. It'll probably be pretty focused on things that would be in that first kind of year or so, for the Switch successor. But I think that's the way to sell it. So, like you said, much less of, the kind of, Switchmas, like, let's dwell on the, what the Joy-Con could do type of stuff. Even if they do have, functionality that's analogous to that, just keep it on the games.
Yeah. And that's also just more digestible to a general audience. Like, this justifies the outlay of cash you're going to have to put out in order to play these games.
Yeah, and you could also, do the side by side. This is how it looks on Switch. This is how it looks on Switch 2 kind of thing. Which,
I mean, assuming
for
that
certain
games on, assuming they look any different. Well,
that's the thing. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff bundled up in that, isn't it? In terms of, what's their sort of, they've already made very clear, one of the few things they have divulged is the notion that, okay, online accounts going to carry over, backwards compatibility is going to exist in some form. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room in the wording, I think, but that could just be mostly about like things that are like licenses that would expire. So you can't say it's everything necessarily that would be playable.
Or you don't know if it's going to be physical games that are compatible.
And you don't know about physical, digital, but they've said something about that. But in terms of performance and all this kind of stuff, we don't know yet how much like of a priority that is. And then on the other side of it, even if it were the case that it's like, if you do play your old games on this device, they look better, they perform better, whatever it might be. How much do you want to focus on that? Because you risk muddling the message of like, is this a new platform? Or is this like a DSi type of thing? Or, a PS4 Pro kind of thing where it's like, okay, it's like mostly for playing games you already had, in the old days, with the DSi, it would have just been, it's a better screen or something. Where a PS4 Pro, it's, it runs your games better. And then you obscure that more important, arguably, element of like, no, this is for exclusive games, for new exclusive games that are, must play experiences. Like you don't want to ignore either one of those at all, because I would imagine they can both motivate purchases. There are so many Switch owners, a good many of them have had a lot of this, 8-year cycle to build up very considerable software libraries that they would appreciate if they could be enhanced or just being able to play them on the new system at all while they're playing the new games. But you don't want to overemphasize it either, is the point, isn't it? And balancing that is easier said than done.
Right. So I definitely don't think we need I think the sizzle reel is actually probably going to be shown as part of the same overall presentation. Like, I think you'll get the sizzle reel. Maybe you'll get the sizzle reel as the lead up to the event. Maybe it'll be a little bit more vague than the one that we got. But I imagine it's all going to be sort of relatively bang bang, and then pre-orders are available now kind of stuff. Which we basically got out of the Switch mess. Like you could pre-order pretty much after it was revealed. So, yeah,
and that was about 2 months out from when it actually launched. I want to say Switch must that broadcast
pretty fast because I think it was January to March. Because that was also when we got Breath of the Wild's release date. Yeah, because it's the same day. I still think mine is better. I still think my idea of The Rock coming out for kickoff of the UFL, which is
so all eyes will be on it, of course.
Which is February. Well, I mean, honestly, so this happens.
Is it February? Is it that shortly after the Super Bowl?
I want to say it's the week after.
Yeah, I guess they just like this train doesn't stop. It's that strategy.
Yeah, I think it's literally the week after. So I think we like this happens with all the spring leagues. The highest rated games are the first games of the season.
Because I think when there were two separate leagues, they did it differently. Like somebody picked up the baton, in February, and somebody
the XFL was right away.
And then someone else was like April, but now they're, the USFL and the XFL. UFL, I don't know how they do it.
Hey, look, they're going to have their second full season. That alone is an accomplishment. Like,
sure, it's been tough, hasn't it? And not just, the logistics of doing minor league pro football, but also stuff like the pandemic happening and ruining everything.
Oh my God. Or Donald Trump happening and ruining the first USFL. Or the first XFL being run by a different crazy person.
Yes, that's true.
Vince McMahon and his football league.
If you're anybody, if you're a Niners fan that enjoyed Steve Young playing for you, if you're an Eagles fan that enjoyed Reggie White playing for you, or indeed if you're a Bills fan that enjoyed Jim Kelly, thank Mr. Trump for all of that.
Oh my God. I'm trying to think who could walk out there with Dwayne Johnson, because he will be Dwayne, because he's not going to be he's going to be in his like weird The Rock / Maui PR hybrid role. So you're definitely going to get a T-Who. I'm trying to think who we could walk out there with. Like, John, help me out here. You're a marketing genius like me. Put on your J&J hat. All right. So I'm trying to remember who won the UFL championship last year.
Birmingham Stallions. I just looked it up.
All right, so we're in Birmingham.
I saw where this was going.
We're at Birmingham Stadium, which they're not playing in the old. We're not playing at Legion Field because that is literally falling apart. I think they play at UAB Stadium. Dwayne walks out there. It's not going to be Danny Garcia, his ex-wife. Maybe it's head coach of the Stallions, Skip fucking Holtz. No, it's gotta be another like available. What's an available celebrity? Like that's the key part. They have to be available.
It'll be like Frank Caliendo or someone like that.
Oh God. So they're going to walk out
doing an impersonation of John Madden. How's about that?
I was going to say Frank Caliendo doing an impersonation of The Rock as The Rock is there.
Yeah.
As Flex Cabana. Oh wait, no. Like just tie it all in. Get it all together. Comes out, he's got his ridiculous shirt on. There's a giant pocket on it. There's obviously something in it. He takes a sip of his tequila, which he then shows the bottle to the camera, pulls it out, and announces it's coming, and then it's like he turns it on and the logo splashes up. That gives us the name, and then he lets out his Maui noise, and then he announces the UFL. I can't remember what the name of the UFL championship game is called. Will be sponsored by Nintendo, whatever the thing is called. Done. We walk out. We get a press release with all the facts on it. Honestly, that would be the most ridiculous bullshit, and I'd be so
James,
fucking happy.
You just identified your own opportunity. I mean, why?
What's that?
Well, I mean, you don't know the name of the UFL chapter. It's because it should be open for business, and why can't it be the Switch 2 Bowl or whatever?
Oh, you know what it was called in 2024?
I mean, Super Bowl's taken, so Super Switch Bowl.
It was simply just called the UFL Championship game. Boring.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Super Bowl was just the AFL NFL Championship game before they coined the phrase. So, I mean, maybe they're trying to very robotically emulate it and just do that twice and then, but in this case, sell the name for money.
I mean, they basically already did with the merger. Like, we got step one. No, like, what if they just, like, it, you know, we just came out of bowl season in college football, which is the most chaotic period of time, where at one point, we had a game called the Bahamas Bowl that was played in the Bahamas, but it was sponsored by a business technology park outside Detroit. So that, like there's no rhyme or reason. And so you get weird shit like the Cheez-It Bowl or the Pop-Tarts Bowl, where there was a sentient Pop-Tart sacrifice.
The Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah.
The Duke's Mayo Bowl, yeah, where somebody got an entire Gatorade cooler
can we?
Mayo
the problem is,
dumped on
like, what company would be interested in making the Wicker Bowl a reality?
That sounds like a bowl that would have happened in the 50s.
That would have been amazing, though. If you a 20-foot wicker football that the losing coach gets burned to death in at midfield, it would be to raise the stakes so high.
So if you want fire and a bowl
exhibition game, is it? Well,
there's going to be an exhibition
of pain.
Well, if you want fire and your trophy, the Pop-Tart Bowl trophy this year was a working pop-up toaster, which will definitely cause a fire in a trophy case at some point. So it's very exciting. But there's, you know, bowls used to be named after business concerns. It would be like the Peach Bowl,
the FedEx Bowl. Yeah.
Well, no, I was thinking more like industries. It'd be like the Orange Bowl. It was literally sponsored by orange growers.
Yeah.
Or the Sugar Bowl.
Yep.
Or, you know, whatever.
Yep.
There was one called the Glass Bowl.
Yep.
It was
Peach Bowl, Cotton Bowl, etc. Yep.
Yeah, all that stuff. Rose Bowl was actually tied to the Rose Bowl parade, or the Parade of Roses. But what if we call the UFL Championship game the Nintendo Bowl, and then every year Nintendo does announcements at the kickoff event for the bowl, and they get to have Dwayne show up with games in the Reggie role for them periodically.
Well, yeah,
he'll do that.
Halftime,
he's available.
Halftime is always a Nintendo Direct.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
It would be a tournament, you know, with Fred Savage as the host.
So all right, too far. But I would think about it this way. I went into Target one day, and I ran into Dwayne selling products in 5 different departments, different products. So he's put his name on. One of them was a hair care product. And then when you went to the electronics department, they were just playing ads for different things on the TVs as the demo reel. Sometimes it'd be movie trailers, but then it would just be ads for shit you could buy in the store. And one of them was him selling the hair care product. And he points to his own head and he goes, "Yeah, I know. I used to have some." And it's like, if he will sell fucking hair care products and make a bald joke about himself, are you telling me we couldn't get him to once a year pull a giant Switch out of his pocket and describe like some new announcement and then throw it to a trailer? We can get him to do that. Are you fucking kidding? Easy as pie. We can get that done every year because it'll be after Mania season, John. So, you know, when the final boss finishes up his work for WWE, which he's a board member of, and proceeds to start work on his next film for the year, like in that little window you got there, he's going to be at the Nintendo Bowl for the UFL Championship. Or maybe it's the UFL Nintendo Bowl Championship game. There we go. He's going to be there anyway. So just have him there. Have him show off whatever the announcement is. Have him standing next to whatever like Nintendo executive they want to start making their person in front of the camera. I feel like they're still trying to figure that out a little bit. Because for a while there, it felt like we were really headed towards Koizumi, but it hasn't felt like that lately. It feels like a lot of the directs have been faceless. Like, start identifying who's the face of Nintendo's external and internal PR. Maybe it's Dwayne himself. Maybe we start getting him. Just give him some stock. That's all it takes to get him to make appearances in your company. Endeavor learned that real fast. Like, we could make this. What if we could just make him a board member?
I mean, at this point, one of the things that's kind of, looking back on 2017, the whole live, stage presentation part of the Switch, Switchmas, as we call it. It kind of seems out of place, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, it's so, like, not what they do these days.
Right.
It seems like in that case, I guess you can theorize why they did it that way. It just seems like, I guess it was supposed to suggest the importance of it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, this is a big deal, right? We have to, communicate that they'd been doing Nintendo Directs at that point for probably about 6 years, something like that. I forget exactly something like around about 2011, wasn't it, when they started the format? So they've been doing those for a while, and maybe they felt like, well, no, just another Nintendo Direct is not enough for something on this scale, right? So it's like, we want to do something live and on stage, and we're doing it from Japan, and we've got live interpretation, and then we get stuff like the Suda scenario, and that's what happens when you do something live, right? You open yourself up to that. It's really hard to imagine them doing something like that again, isn't it? Really, it's like, you just kind of feel like, no, they wouldn't. I don't think there'd be the same self-consciousness about, the idea of like, oh, well, we have to, dress it up as to make people like believe that it's important. Like, I think the behavior of the internet in general suggests there is interest in this. We don't have to.
Yeah, we're good.
We don't have to grab people by the lapels that hard to get them to pay attention. So I'm expecting much more of a sort of just like a, presumably polished and, screened and approved to high heaven video, pre-recorded video when the time comes this time.
Well, so that brings up an interesting point, because I was thinking of the standpoint of like, how can we anchor it to other things to sort of feed off their attention? But maybe they are the attention getter. At which point, having them at the launch for the UFL season is actually a benefit to Fox and Disney, who own the rights to it. And just like tied in with Universal, with the parks, you've got all the big players. Man, we got it. It's the anchor. It's the lead-in for all the other products. See, it's confident. I like that, Greg. Leading with confidence in your product. Like, no.
They're entitled to have a great deal more now than they did 8 years ago. I think we can agree on that.
All right, John, would it be funnier for him to pull it out of his pocket at the UFL kickoff, or in the middle of Mania season? Mania doesn't feel as funny because they're going to be it'd be like, and the Nintendo Switch successor reveal sponsored by Snickers.
Mania also doesn't need Mania
doesn't need more bombast.
Well, no, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, the USFL. The USFL would need the attention of a product announced more than Mania would.
I want the Flex Kavana announcement of the Switch successor. That's all I'm here for now. I want him in full Flex Kavana mode. That's where we need it. Oh my God, this is such a stupid idea. I love this. I might go right about, so you weren't here last week where we talked about the eShop, and I killed an editorial. Like, I basically spilled all the guts of an editorial I'd been working on for months, just kind of off and on. Like, now, this might actually turn into another article that I write for the site just to make somebody edit it. Oh, this is so stupid. Okay. All right. This was supposed to be an easy one, but it turned into a big fun joke. So, we got two emails back to back, or not back to back. We're going to read them back to back. They actually came at quite a distance from one another. They are both from Juan. And I'll read the first one and we can respond to it. And then I'll read the second one. You'll see why we are connecting them. Juan writes, howdy. Who is, in your opinion, the worst final boss in a Nintendo game? I abhor Demon King Malladus due to the use of the Spirit Flute, one of the mechanics that I most despise in all Zelda games. I had to go look up who Demon King Malladus is, but knowing the Spirit Flute, I had a guess.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This is the boss in Spirit Drax, and the Spirit Flute he's referring to is the fact that you could actually play the flute on that game.
Yeah, the sort of the pan pipes, kind of pan flute, the kind of thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it just looks like a giant. I don't even know how to describe him. Kind of like a pig.
It's very like there's a character, not to spoil Spirit Tracks, but I mean we did do a retroactive not that long ago about it, so we probably spoiled it back then, and it's quite old now. But there's a character, he's like Chancellor Cole, or I believe is his name. You know, it's just like this bad character in the kingdom. That you're in Spirit Tracks, and like he gets transformed. It's like the equivalent transformation for like a sort of relatively ordinary sort of bloke, rather than what happens to Ganondorf, who's already a bit of a beefcake. But it's the equivalent sort of bestial blue pig thing kind of applied to him.
Yep, horns, all the stuff. Yep. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't remember that fight happening.
I remember it pretty well, because not so much to do with the flute part. Although, I imagine people remember that in general from Spirit Tracks, that was kind of annoying when it would make you do that. People especially sort of seem to be irked by the notion of like if they were playing it on public transport, or not just Spirit Tracks, but any game that required the use of blowing into the microphone. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to start blowing into my DS on the train or the bus. So it kind of killed a play session for them. So there was always a kind of, people, a certain amount of moaning about that, which is understandable. But the specific boss fight as well, I seem to remember there was a bit where like he does this attack where like a bunch of projectiles converge on Link, like home in on him, and you've got to do the spin attack to simultaneously deflect all of them. Right, which is a riff on something that's been in probably quite a few boss fights before. But of course, you're doing it with the touchscreen, right? You're doing the sort of scribbling a circle to do it. And so getting the timing of that right and all that, it wasn't that easy. It was sort of a little bit, it's the last boss, so, you can argue it shouldn't be a total pushover or anything, but it just felt like it was a little bit out of place in the sense that it required a level of precision from an input that is inherently imprecise,
right?
Just didn't quite belong, So I'm not entirely surprised that one would say that on that basis.
Now I gotta think of his name. This is kind of a tough one because it's not a Nintendo game anymore, and now I'm even blanking on the name of the fucking game. The third-person shooter that Rare made.
Jet Force Gemini? Mizar?
Yeah, Mizar. Yeah, the Mizar boss fight. I fucking hate that boss fight. Like
I remember having to do it many times to beat it. It was quite tough.
It's so hard. I think I took like 100 cracks at it.
I've just like the first few bars of the music, which I don't think were necessarily unique to that boss fight, but they may as well have been, because that's the only way. So that it just burned in my head forever, because how many times I started again. Oh
yeah. Oh yeah. It is like we make jokes about Retro's boss fights being too long and too hard, and they are. Like, fucking tone it down.
I think with the Retro ones, it's more that they're too long. Like, they're not even necessarily that hard I mean, this varies. I could think of ones that are too difficult, famously. I say famously, all relative, but, like Prime 2 has some bosses that, especially in its original form, were just the balance wrong, basically.
Right.
That were too hard. But more often, it's just they're too long. And they get hard because your concentration starts to wane because it's attrition. Going on too long. Yeah. So, that'd be the big thing with them.
Yeah, it's a war of attrition. This is both. That boss fight is very long if you are successful. But also, he's really fucking hard. It's just a miserable fight, and like I
think it's pretty heavily based on an earlier fight. Like, you fight Mizar, kind of like it's one of those games that kind of has like a fake ending, or like a midpoint. Like, and it seems like it's a climax, but it's actually the midpoint. You kind of have like a post game where you do more stuff, and then you fight him, for real. And so it's not like entirely novel. and it's quite long, and it's quite difficult. I do love the payoff with Floyd. That is quite funny. The sacrifice. the little flying sidekick has to make, but the actual gameplay less so.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I don't remember the details of the fight as much as I remember how miserable I was playing it. Which is saying a lot, because I played it over 20 years ago. Like, it's like, I remember this fight being absolutely the worst all the time. And yeah, I still have bad feelings about that fight in particular. Which says a lot. I don't know, Greg, do you have one?
Yes, because that's the thing. You could go either way on boss fights, right? In terms of last boss fights, because it's like, on the one hand, you're like, yeah, if it's too much, well, that's not good, right? You end up not liking it because it's like, I want, maybe you've enjoyed this game. I want to see the end, but this last boss is just like really, it's really difficult, or it's really long, or both, or it's kind of tedious, whatever it is.
Right.
And it becomes a sort of impediment to just finishing the game.
This is supposed to be my payoff.
But if it's nothing, if it's too easy, that's also, not good, is it? Like if it's, I can remember as a kid always being disappointed that Gradius games would end with a sort of feeble brain that couldn't really resist you. I mean, I guess it kind of makes some sort of sense, like in a narrative way of like, okay, well, you've just, you've beaten everything, every ship in its fleet and all the boss rushes to get to this point. And then it's just this helpless thing that you just shoot and it's dead. But that as well is, it's not a Nintendo game per se, obviously, but like I guess there's some final bosses that can be a little bit that kind of way, you know what I mean, that don't seem terribly challenging by comparison, to others in the series, for instance. I mean, I know, like, the thing is about, like, I can't say the very last fight of Wind Waker in this category, because the scenario is great. I love everything about the presentation and all that. The actual, like, just very cheesable press A to counter Ganon, and then he's going to go really easily. That is like, it is a bit anticlimactic in that sense. It doesn't put up enough resistance.
I think that's fair. I think that one does feel more like this is just your payoff for having finished the game, versus this is meant to be a major impediment, which I think goes more towards what we get in, like, Tears of the Kingdom, where it's much more like this boss is going to be hard regardless of how prepared you are.
Well, and again, I guess with that one, it is the other part of it, because it's sort of still calibrated, Breath of the Wild was, the notion of you could just go straight there. Like, the boss has to be capable of kicking the arse out of most people that just kind of want to see what happens if you go there, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it, which is not a concern that, a lot of bosses in the series, obviously the ones before we got to Breath of the Wild ever had. Like, there was much more of a kind of narrow range of how many heart containers someone's going to have and how many arrows they're going to have, whatever it is that's pertinent to that fight, because it was linear and there were so many dungeons that were mandatory and so forth. So yeah, it's a little bit trickier balancing a fight like that, in terms of, presumably they they don't want it to be impossible for people that are trying crazy shit for going there with very little gear. But equally, they don't want it to be so easy that someone that just tries to bluff their way there, is just going to be able to sort of beat the game and go, oh well. So, yeah, they kind of made that a tricky balancing act by virtue of wanting to free up the structure.
Now, the work they make you do to get to the final boss in Tears of the Kingdom, though, is so much harder than the work they make you do in Breath of the Wild.
You kind of feel like that was something that they took from the Breath of the Wild experience a bit, wasn't it? It's like, we should do more. Like, we should have more gates, essentially, in front of the actual final boss.
Yeah, because you could quite literally accidentally into the final boss in Breath of the Wild. There's no way you're doing that in Tears of the Kingdom. Because if you climb up the backside of the castle, you basically avoid almost all of the defenses. And then you're really only a handful of navigation points away from being in the boss chamber. Because I think it's literally a hole in the ground you can drop through and you fall into the room the boss is in. It's like you could actually literally accidentally end up in the boss fight. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom, there's a lot of dungeony stuff you have to do to get to him. It takes a really long time, actually. But Guillaume, John, do you have a worst Nintendo boss?
A worst Nintendo boss? I mean, that's a lot. Go ahead, Guillaume.
Final boss?
Final boss, yeah.
Yeah, no, I went through a list like earlier today of all the Nintendo published games, and nothing really jumped at me. I was just thinking of, like sometimes in a string of Mario games, like the boss fights were pretty rote. And reviews complain about that for a long time, like especially on the DS. But then they kind of upped their game a little bit by making the Bowser fight more of an event, more of a set piece. So, they got a little bit better that way. It was not more of the, like, hit it 3 times, and you're done thing.
64 is just really bad, because you do that boss fight so many times.
You've already done it twice. Yeah. It doesn't add a lot, really, does it? I mean, it's just like, okay, well, the platform starts to crumble, so the shot you got to make gets longer because you could kind of cheese it by grabbing him at the perimeter, really close to one of the bombs or mines that you're chucking him onto. It's a really easy shot at that point. Where it's like, you can't do that anymore because it's a smaller platform. That's it. That's as much development as you get.
Yeah. For one that I guess frustrated me, I suppose, like the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is especially long. So that was one of those retro final bosses that we were talking about. I just watched a video of it. Like, I couldn't remember exactly what it entailed, and it just went on for like 7 minutes.
In my head, I was thinking, I think it's like 7 minutes long.
And I don't know about the video necessarily, but I mean, there's a decent chance that's probably cleaner execution that you get out of me anyway.
Yeah, missed quite a few, opportunities to hit it, but still, took 7 minutes, and I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous at some point. Like the boss, like it keeps jumping from your level to like the background
firing stuff at you,
and sometimes when it's on in the foreground with you, like it's shooting these ice birds out of a horn, and it's just bonkers stuff, but it takes so long, and like you gotta wait for it to charge at you. It seems very tricky to actually land on the back of the boss as it's charging at you. Like there's a very high chance that you're gonna hit either the horned hat that it's wearing, or you're gonna miss it. You're gonna go over it, and it's just. I remember it being not super fun, but then
you got to do a lot right.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't know. I think Karen and I were playing co-op. I don't think we spent several days over this. Like probably like half an hour. I don't know. I don't remember. That's the thing. Like if I really found a final boss really shitty, I probably haven't played that game since.
Just walk away.
I walked away or I finished it, and I was like, maybe I replayed the start of it, but I certainly haven't played through the whole thing again.
It's just a bad note to end that game on, because it is beatable, and I did it, but I just felt super frustrated at the end of it. Like, I did this, but I don't feel good about it.
I mean, I think the DKC Returns final boss was quite a lot easier, so I don't know whether there was almost like an overcorrection with that.
Right.
Where, they kind of, again, like even DKC Returns has some boss fights that probably gone too long, but it's still like, I don't think any of them were that difficult. But I feel like this would be less of a problem if they were more willing to put like, a sort of, you know, the platformers generally, so many, you know, Mario, DK, like various ones, they will have like a kind of the real ending for like expert players, right? You know, like secret levels. Well, a lot of them don't seem to like to do an actual secret, like true last boss a lot of the time. Like Kirby will. You will definitely get like either some sort of harder version, like special version of like the final boss at the end of a Kirby sort of thing. But with, you know, with like, usually with sort of like DKC games or like the Mario games, like the last level, the crazy, like for experts level will not feature a boss. It's just a platforming thing. But like, yeah, maybe this boss, like they should have done two versions of it. Like they should have done the version that was just for like to see the credits and then do like the sort of harder remix to be like the boss of the secret level world or something. You know, like, that could have been, you know, an idea perhaps, because again, it's like, you know, any time with these sorts of games, it's a pretty well established formula these days of just like, you're gonna have that extra content that's there for people that want it, where you really can crank up the difficulty, and you get that always with the basic platforming of something, you know, just like, you know, really, you know, strict timing on jumps and, you know, complicated sequences and stuff, but they don't tend to like do it so much on bosses. And this kind of feels like, yeah, maybe it was a boss that belonged in something like that. But again, you know, it's one of those things where I was kind of happy that it had a certain amount of teeth. I just kind of wish that it happened quicker. And like you said, it's those phases where you can't hurt it that make it feel longer. Even if they don't actually go on that long in reality, it's just like, you know, you kind of feel like you're just, you know, circling the landing area and then it's like, okay, well now I can land, now we've got this part, the part that actually counts, where it can actually do damage. It creates more of a feeling of like this, you know, kind of tedium of like you're waiting to dodging some of the same things until you can, you know, get back involved again. And even then, you get the additional problem of like, sometimes you've got this window of opportunity that if you don't hit it, you go back, the cycle begins again, and then it's like another period of time where you can't. I've always felt like they should at least like, make some sort of, accommodation, like some sort of compromise there, where it's like, if you fail to hit in the window of opportunity, the limited window of opportunity that's there, they should do an abridged version of the cycle so you get back to it quicker. Again, which, you know, it is making it easier, but it's not just about making it easier. I think it's just making it snappier and more, keep maintaining the intensity of it and making it more enjoyable that way. It's something that Retro could really use with doing. I guess we'll see what happens with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, because, I mean, yeah, if you think their platformer fights could go on for a long time, wow. Metroid Prime had some boss fights that are like sagas, and when you get that Samus death noise at the end, you're like, I'm not sure I'll ever look at this again. That's how you feel about it in that moment. It's like when you go all through the phase planet at the end of Prime 3 and die to the corrupted mother brain thing. It's just like, nah, I'm not doing that again.
I wasn't super impressed with, I mean, I guess probably it's because of the last half of that game, how they just kind of make you run through certain gauntlets over again. But Super Mario 3D Land, I didn't really love the final boss in that. Much more used to kind of one-on-one battles with Bowser rather than having Bowser chase you.
It is a platforming sort of challenge, basically. Is it like Bowser's in the background, he's throwing stuff out. See, I actually do like that, but I think they did it even better in subsequent games. Where, like, I think some of it's just like with 3D Land, like, they're trying to make it into a big set piece, but, you know, like, the graphics they could do on the 3DS are somewhat limited. And so they do some fun stuff with the perspective and the stereoscopy and all that kind of, but really, like with 3D World, with the skyscraper and the double cherry cat Bowsers, and like, so, you know, around you, it feels more like, this is what you wanted to do. And, you know, you got there eventually.
So it wasn't super impressive. To me, it was like the weakest, basically the sort of final boss battles, or the major boss battles in that game, were the weakest part of that game. So.
Still, I mean, if we're talking about Mario game, we've talked about a number of them, but I mean, Sunshine. I mean, come on.
Yeah, for sure.
That last boss is not great at all, is it? I mean,
I didn't even. I mean, going all the way back, I didn't even really love fighting Wart in Super Mario Brothers 2 either. He was just sort of like, okay, like that's a really, really old callback. But I just remember being pretty underwhelmed fighting him. So
it's funny because I was going to maybe mention it, but then I thought like maybe I just sucked at fighting him. You know, like I wasn't aware that you could. I think you can just like go under the veggies and grab them, right? Like you just hold down the B button. That's it. Like I think that I didn't figure that out when I was a kid. I tried to jump on the veggies to pull them up, like as they were being shut out of that veggie machine. What a ridiculous game. But yeah, and I also probably struggled with like running and throwing the things, and so a lot of times when I'm fighting bosses in Super Mario Brothers 2, like I just like, I meant to chuck that far away, but no, like Mario just like, you know, puts that right in front of his feet. That's not really an effective way to fight a boss.
All right, so we combined this with another email for a reason that'll become very apparent in a second. Greg, would you read the other email to go with this?
Sure. One also writes, greetings, celebrated mostly Nintendo-related podcasters. Being a big fan of the Legend of Zelda series, one of the most interesting parts that's common to all Zelda games are the various boss battles, as they regularly require different approaches to beat them or have some of the most exciting set pieces. Which are your top 5 boss battles in Zelda games? Mine would be Dark Link in Zelda 2, Volvagia in Ocarina of Time, Blizzetta in Twilight Princess, Koloktos in Skyward Sword, Divine Beast Varuta in Breath of the Wild, and Demon King Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, there's some good ones in there to sort of backtrack a bit. So if I'm not mistaken, the Blizzetta one, that would be the Snow Peak, the Yeti lady that you've been trying to get soup for in the whole dungeon. That is it's quite memorable. Or the whole thing.
She's possessed, essentially. It's a weird fight too. I can't. Isn't that the one where you use like cannons and shit?
Where you and of course the main item for that dungeon is the big sort of mace, isn't it? You know, with the big the spiked ball and chain thing, and you know, like it's like this rotating kind of ice formations that kind of fall down, and you got to smash the ice to get at the boss and all. I mean, it's been a while. Naturally, I did play the Wii U HD version, but even that was, you know, quite some time ago now. But it is memorable. That whole the whole scenario, you know, of the dungeon getting there to this mansion, you know, that's just a lonely kind of place in the snow, and it kind of downplays, you know, how dungeon-like it is in the beginning. But, you know, obviously, you know, as you go, it's got all the features of a dungeon, and it's a little bit reminiscent of, you know, kind of A Link to the Past, where you've got that one dungeon in the Dark World where, like, it's like an NPC character you lure into the boss room, and then they turn into they reveal themselves as the boss. It's like that sort of concept, but, you know, with like a proper scenario and like dialogue and stuff.
I thought the one that I was sure was going to get mentioned, if you're going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom, was the what's the flying one? I'm blanking on its name now.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, with the you know, with the Rito, their boss fight essentially for that game.
Yeah, I need to find its name. Tears of the Kingdom bosses. It also has a really good song that we used in one of the
because it's referencing
Colgera.
Yes, that's right. It's the sort of the fly-in sort of riff on that kind of Zelda monster that's been in a bunch of games. But yeah, it's using the Dragon Roost Island motif because it's the Rito. That's the common link there.
Which is a funny thing because I actually think the Dragon Roost Island boss fight is also really cool because of the very cartoony shit that. I mean, that one is like the most cartoon boss fight.
Yes, it is.
If you haven't played it or it's been a long time, Link is swinging using the grappling hook on the tail of the dragon that's sitting in the volcano, which results in it basically slamming its butt down and hurting the enemy below him.
A huge like slab of volcanic rock just like crashes on top of the boss and shatters its like protective outer exoskeleton. And,
repeatedly.
It goes very well with the cell shaded style of the game. It very much feels like you wouldn't have come up with this scenario if you weren't, kind of dealing in this aesthetic in the first place. It feels like they're very much sort of working together in that way. And it's an early boss, so, it's not, like, terribly complicated. None of the Wind Waker ones really are they? I mean, they never go that far.
Not really.
Twilight Princess, I think, went quite a bit further with the boss fight. Again, maybe you could call it a correction, of sorts, where it's like, okay, let's go, deeper, and there were more of them because there were more dungeons, and just like kind of maybe go a little bit more difficult with the Zant one from that is quite memorable because it's sort of like a stealth boss rush because it reprises various bits of the bosses, but like this time it's Zant like kind of pretending to be them. It's very surreal. I mean, everything about Zant pretty much is. He's very sort of goofy and, So like you get like bits of previous boss fights, but just with like giant Zant head coming out of the ground instead of, what was originally doing it and stuff. And I think that, the Snow Peak boss is kind of referenced in that, and the music like changes to kind of, appropriately, it's like these sort of weirdo remixes of what those boss fight songs were originally. Like it's, again, gameplay wise, it's maybe not that sophisticated, but it's just a very kind of, it's a trope. It's something that's been done a million times in various games and indeed Zelda games where it's like, oh, let's, revisit like a bunch of bosses before we do the last one, but presented in a very kind of, distinct way that makes it feel less cheap and more fun, like as a revisit, a reprise of those things.
I would say a lot of the bosses in A Link Between Worlds, because aren't they incredibly easy, as I remember? Most of those bosses.
Everything in that game is incredibly easy.
It's just
there's a lot of easy with it. I mean, they do some fun things with the 3D kind of stuff and some of the merging and all that. So I mean, there's I wouldn't say again. I mean, some of the Link to the Past bosses that it's sort of referencing or dealing with is. Not like the most sophisticated. It was, I would say, like Ocarina of Time, like really fully kind of codified the whole, like using the item to kind of, expose a weak spot and then kill the boss. But the thing about that is that could go too far.
Right.
Couldn't it? Because it became too rote. And so, I think bosses where it wasn't just like, oh yeah, the item you got, however many like rooms of the dungeon ago, just use that, and you could like
that's the weakness.
That is a problem. So I think this is where Skyward Sword I think was relatively strong because like that seemed like they'd heard that criticism a bit about the dungeons in general and the bosses of just like, well, it's too narrow. It's too like this dungeon is the hookshot dungeon and you hookshot the hookshot and then you win, So with Skyward Sword, there's more of a like, you're going to have a toolkit and it's going to grow, but you're going to keep using the tools. So you're going to come back to them. And obviously the sword play was always a big part of it. I mean, the Koloktos one that's mentioned by one there, that is quite memorable as I recall, if I'm thinking of the correct one. Isn't that the one with the really giant swords? Like it's got multiple arms.
Yeah.
Sets of arms, I should say. And it's like you have sort of fighting you with gigantic swords. Like that is really quite memorable. Great music and there's a lot of good battle music in that naturally, but that's a pretty cool fight, and a lot of the bosses in that are pretty strong. There is that one that's really goofy looking that's just got like the big Cyclops thing on the ship. That was a bit rubbish, I think. Or it may be more that it just looked risible than I can't even remember how it played at this point. But I think they did some good stuff with Skyward Sword's bosses in the main. And you had the recurring Girahim sort of sword fights and stuff, which I guess were a little bit more dependent on how much you like the motion plus sword play. But I think that I enjoyed them.
Yeah, there was some really neat stuff in there that I thought created interesting challenges with the swordplay stuff. Guillaume, did you say one?
No, I didn't. Again, like I feel like I don't remember bosses all that much. Like the one Zelda game that I've played the most outside of Link's Awakening, which I would not say like has the best bosses. Is Wind Waker, and so I'm just looking at various videos of the bosses that I've forgotten from Wind Waker, but they're the ones that I remember the most. And I would say maybe like Godan, which is the kind of the Aztec mask with the hands. Like it's yet another Zelda boss with disembodied hands and a head that just that you need to destroy to beat, like, and the hands have, of course, eyes in the middle of the palm that you have to shoot at. But
an Andross.
So like it had been seen before, but but it looks very cool though. Like it is very stylish, and it is kind of unnerving. Like even if Wind Waker is not especially difficult, the way that the face will sometimes just rapid fire like napalm bomb you, like is pretty striking. Like it's just like and like the big explosions, very cartoony, colorful, but very it's very cinematic. Like it looks cool, and you have to keep rolling to evade it. So that's a pretty good one, and I don't know, like Goma is, you've already mentioned, it's pretty cool, but maybe like the big flower one, Kali Demos, because like that's where you use the boomerangs, multi-latching on, like multi-targeting capability. So like that's kind of cool, and it's a cool looking boss in the first place, just all like vegetal and floaty and with not tentacles, but vines, I guess, like all over the place. Like it really showed off the Wind Waker style with the way that that boss's like leaves just flop about, like it's very kind of not moving, but like dynamic, like it shows off the animation of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ocarina of Time, I mean, Volvagia, the dragon that Johan mentions, that's, kind of a pretty interesting boss fight. It actually got reprised in Echoes of Wisdom very directly, which is kind of interesting. But I would say for me, like, I mean, the finale is pretty memorable. I think it delivers. But probably Phantom Ganon would be the one that I'd pick as being the most memorable out of that. Some of it's the scenario, I guess, the whole, like, it's coming out of the paintings, like going in and out of them on the horse and everything. But yeah, that'd probably be my most memorable pick. Like, also the sort of a little bit of a reference to what one was saying there, the callback to Dark Link, which is not a dungeon boss, it's like a mid boss in the water temple. That's a pretty memorable moment in there. But I think Twilight Princess is probably where they went hardest on this in terms of like really trying to kind of get like the big set pieces. Like, I mean, you kind of feel like the whole origin of the spinner thing in the desert temple in that game is probably bound up in the boss in terms, that whole, cause you've got like the giant skeleton thing and you're riding the spinner on a rail and kind of jumping around and then, smashing away at it and you're kind of opening it up for attack. Like, that's a very kind of, relatively elaborate, shall we say, like not just like, okay, we walk into the circular room and the boss appears and we fight it. Like that is a genuine set piece that they made there. And that feels like really quite sort of, well constructed and just large scale. And again, like kind of, you just want to feel maybe they started with that and thought, what else could we do with this spinning, platform thing? And the answer was not that much, actually. But it was kind of cool for that moment at least. But you know, lots of other stuff I already mentioned. The Zant fight, like the Ganondorf fight, has like a bunch of different phases. Like I think it's relatively kind of strong in that area, and I think some of it is because, like I said, with the Wind Waker ones, they look cool, but there's not that many of them, and they didn't put up that much of a fight. So I think they kind of felt the need to, you know, we mentioned last time about stuff that was like ripping straight out of Lord of the Rings. Like there's the when you fight essentially the Balrog in the Goron mines, like in the middle. I think it's the second dungeon, I want to say. You know, like they were trying pretty hard. The Bridge
fight is basically right out of Lord of the Rings too. Yeah, there's a lot.
That's like referenced in the Smash Brothers stage where the kind of they come and blow up the bridge and all that kind of stuff. Right?
And it was the very first trailer for that game was on the bridge, the one that was set to the Conan music.
Yes, which was originally used in an Ocarina of Time commercial. So it was like it's just they were doing everything because so we understand you like that Ocarina of Time. Well, this is more of that. It's very much so.
I'm trying to think if there's any others. I do want to give one special mention before we wrap this up because it's a Zelda style game, but it's not a Nintendo. Well, I mean Nintendo published this one. It is the final boss of Star Fox Adventures Dinosaur Planet. We've joked about this. I just want to mention it. The entire game.
This is your answer for both one question.
The entire
is what
game,
you're telling me.
We are on Dinosaur Planet.
It's simultaneously one of your favourite Zelda bosses and one of the worst bosses in the Nintendo.
We are dealing with general scales the entire time. There's no implication that there's any higher power involved. You get to the top of the tower with whatever the dumb shit you have to collect are, and the spirits that you've unleashed and all that crap. And you reach the top, you're supposed to be able to activate the thing and stop General Scales, and you fight him. Oh, you don't even fight Scales. You get up there, you do the thing, and there's this big statue that's just been sitting there the whole time. Implication, it's been there for thousands of years. It turns around and it's fucking Andross, and you have an Andross fight. There's no reason for him to be there. Why is he there? Has he been there for thousands of years? Who can say? But he's here now. It's like, oh, fucking what? But the boss fights in the game are generally pretty poor. So this is just an Andross fight. It's like, in that respect, it's fine. But in every other respect, why the fuck is Andross here all of a sudden? There's no implication that he's any reason he should be here. But also, he's he's literally on the other side of this statue that's been here for thousands of years. Was he just sitting there all along? What the fuck is that game? That game is so bad. It's so, like, there's so many things about that game where it's like, I can see Nintendo's hands going into this, Rare, fix this, make this different, do something else. People wonder why Nintendo sold Rare. That game shows a lot of dysfunction. But the boss fight's fine. The realization moment, it's like the opposite of when you stick the sword in Ganondorf's head. We're like, wow, I did not expect that. That's so wild. This is, wow, I did not expect that. That's so monstrously stupid. It's something else. Like, if you don't think about it, you just go like, yeah, of course, Andross is at the end of the game. But if you think about it for like 1 second, you go, wait, what? Did they just get a memo that says Andross has to be the final boss? And in a very Rareware kind of way, they're like, what's the dumbest way we could put him in? What if he's just a statue that's been sitting there for 1,000 years?
They kind of, well, yeah, maybe it's a bit passive aggressive or something. We did talk about the fact that once, I think, that like the literal plot to Donkey Kong Land is like cranky like making them do it or something, isn't it? Like it's almost like sort of like, why are we doing this? It's always acknowledged in the plot of the game of just like, yeah, this is like we're having to do it for a dare or something. It's so kind of ill-conceived. So yeah, I don't know whether it's that aspect of them showing through. I've still not played Star Fox Adventures all these years later, so I can't comment on it directly.
If it were available, it would be a fascinating retroactive game. Because there's a lot of shit in that game where you're like, why is this here? What the fuck?
Well, obviously, famously sort of troubled is probably somewhat accurate, but just like eventful development cycle, being an N64 game, then it's a GameCube game, being something that's the original IP, then it's a Star Fox game, all the fact that Rare were going to be sold like pretty shortly after it was coming out, or whatever. I forget the exact timing there.
I think it was announced before the game came out.
Yeah, maybe it was. So just like whatever effect any of that stuff was having, like it's I guess it'd be kind of fun to speculate, how things ended up being the way that they were, in some of these cases. So, if that was on a future NSO kind of scenario, I might give it a go at the very least. See how far I could get before it kind of maybe it wears out its welcome, as it were. But I wouldn't mind trying it.
There's so much ridiculous shit in that game. It's like Tricky running around wanting to play with his fucking ball. It's like, Jesus, why is this here? The fact that the shop, you negotiate. There's no prices on things. You make an offer. And the ghost in their best possible man doing the voice of an old woman, Rare style voice acting, which you run into a lot in their games, will tell you if the price is acceptable to her. Which again, I remind you, is a ghost of a dinosaur. And if you just go like, I can't deal with this fucking negotiation shit, and you offer a large number just to get it over with, she'll just go, no, that's too much. It's like, what the fuck is this? Why can't these things just have a fucking price? Why? Oh, it's so stupid. It's such a dumb game. Periodically you'll play it and you'll be like, this game is normal and everything is fine. And then the game will introduce something and you're like, who the fuck put this in here? What the fuck is this? But every time you want to buy from the shop, you end up playing Rusty's Real Deal Baseball. It's like, I don't need to negotiate.
What can he say?
I don't need to negotiate prices. Oh, it's so stupid. What a ridiculous game. All right. Emails. I'll do it for the email segment. You send emails. I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling. You send emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. You are required under international law to send us a question, comment, game. If you're going to send us a game, so we got a game sent to us. It's been spoiled for me because the answers are just literally in the email. If you could try to find some way to obscure the answers or at least make it so we can all play along, it's really helpful. I understand that's difficult to do. Some people have sent us like a Google spreadsheet where like the questions were on one and then the answers were on tabs. Like so each answer was on another tab. So it'd be like question one answer, question two answer, question. So like I could read the questions out of tab one and then go click the tab for that answer and call it out. So, something like that. Something that makes it so we can all play. But I appreciate games. Games take a lot of work. So, but again, that's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Your mother wants you to send us an email. Don't disappoint your mother. And now we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to do a little bit of new business. So please stay tuned. We return to you with some new business. As I applied earlier, I don't really have any new business to talk about. It's not been the kind of week where I get to play video games. So, Greg, what have you been up to?
Well, the saga is finally concluded. I did roll credits on Mario and Luigi Brothership, so yeah, it's been. I think it's been about a couple of months. I think is what it ended up being, which is for like I said, it was probably
November.
Little bit over 40 hours in the end playing time. So. Like I said, not crazy long by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly I think longer than quite a lot of the Mario and Luigi, if not all the previous games. I mean, I seem to remember a certain amount of grousing from some about the length of something like Dream Team, that maybe it was a bit longer than the others, but I don't know whether it was quite this long. And stuff like Inside Story or, the original Superstar Saga, I don't think that it was, kind of getting to this kind of length, which I don't know how much of a function that is of this, in some sense being the first console version of the series, if you like. Obviously Switch is both, but, all the other Mario and Luigi games were strictly portable affairs. Whereas, Paper Mario, was generally what you'd have on console for something in a similar vein. I don't know if that at all kind of influenced them to think maybe it needed to be longer. I mean, like I said, again, it's not crazy long or anything, especially in this genre. But I would say, I did, keep enjoying it. It was somewhat protracted because of, doing Layton for a couple of weeks or so. Which, dragged it out a little bit, it was in the game's fault per se. But, equally, I think, even though, like I said, it was never to the point where it's like, I don't want to keep playing this. Looking at it now, being able to see, the start to finish of it, I think there's definitely some kind of flab in there. The game would be better with it kind of being pared back in certain areas. Like there's definitely some kind of, I mentioned this, I think, right at the beginning of talking about it. Like the areas that you go to are kind of seem quite well constructed for portable play in terms of they're not too large. And they've got some kind of design hooks in there for retraversal and stuff. And all that plays out as you'd expect over the course of the game. You've got these kind of relatively compact little sections for, kind of, achieving things in the story and then moving on. So it's like, even though it might be kind of a console game, it still seems to, be keeping in mind the fact that, a lot of people are going to be playing this portably and whatnot. But where it kind of, for me, just goes a little bit too far is some of these things, some of these tactics where it's like, okay, they feel very directly like we're trying to make the game longer. I mean, I wonder who got anything on the scale of like a original Wind Waker Triforce Hunt scenario, but there's definitely situations where it's like, yeah, the levels are constructed for retraversal, but then there's other sections where it's like, this is almost like you're going back there a time too many. It's like, well, we've had this structure the whole game where you kind of go find a new, kind of place to explore, and then you do it and you connect it back to the sort of central hub, and then you move on. And then, like, you kind of in a part of the game where it almost feels like, well, maybe there should be a new place to do that with, but instead we've taken the old place and said, oh, there's a new problem with that now, and it's become disconnected, actually, and you've got to go back there and connect it again. Stuff like that very easily kind of strains at the, like, we just, struggling to, pad the time out that you exactly had planned for this to take, and you're sort of doing it another way, something in that kind of neighborhood, it's like, it just like there's a few like certain kind of side thing, well, not really side things, but like mini games and stuff. Like there's this rhythm mini game about like dancing that like is recurring at various points throughout the game with like these performer character that you meet, and again it's like they go to the well once too many with that. It's like, it's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's a pretty basic rhythm mini game, but it's not compelling enough to bring it back the number of times they bring it back. Like, it's just, and that's, it's sort of emblematic of a few things really, probably towards the end of the game, where it's just like, like a lot of the stuff here, there's not much of it that is outright, doesn't work, but it's just like there's a little bit too much asked of it in terms of, I don't think there's quite enough variety to support the game being as long as it is. In this case, like, for instance, you think about like something like Inside Story or, even like Paper Jam. After that, like, you had these like completely different boss scenarios, so like the Bowser kaiju battles, or those like weird like paper giant mech battles in Paper Jam and stuff like that. Like, you don't really have anything like quite that different in the battle sequence. The only equivalent you kind of have is that in major boss battles, like, you have eventually you get these kind of bits where Luigi has like a flash of inspiration for how to do like extra damage, and it triggers some sort of like almost like a QTE or like a mini game or something different, which if you do it successfully, the boss is like stunned and you can do, really large amounts of damage in that kind of window. But it's not that different most of the time from the regular battles, and the whole game is pretty much like, they have little diversions, mini games, and you get new abilities for traversing the world and so forth. So it's not as if the gameplay doesn't develop, it's not as if there isn't some variety, but taking it to the length that it is, it strains those things a bit more than, and I just don't think it's necessary, at least. This is my point of view. As I've mentioned, I think when we talked about the game before, it feels like it skews, maybe even a little bit more on the young side than previous games in the series did. And, I am very much outside of that target demo at this stage. So, it's not a surprise that someone like me would be like, well, we could spend a bit less time talking, we could spend a bit less time, revisiting some of these areas and stuff. But I really do think it would benefit from that, not just, from me wanting to kind of make things snappier in general, but, I just think, the experience would be more tightly paced. You would appreciate the sort of different facets of the game without getting sort of tired of some of them as much. And it would just be, kind of a better overall experience for pretty much everyone that play the game, except maybe some that are absolutely, resolute about how long it should take to see the credits. But I mean, there's more side questy stuff you could be doing if you want to spend more time with it. And so, there isn't a particular shortage of that kind of thing as well. But it just, like I said, I feel like, with the game like this, the battle system, obviously you're going to spend a fair amount of time with it. And, one of the things about Mario & Luigi is it's very involved version of the, your Super Mario RPG kind of introduces the timed hits concept, right? And that persists into Paper Mario and various things that have kind of been inspired by it. But with Mario & Luigi, it goes beyond timed hits, right? It's like you have that, but you also have this quite elaborate process of dodging attacks and, almost getting into kind of like punch out kind of stuff at various points where it's very much like, okay, yeah, you get a very specific cue, which means, you can do a very specific counter to do more damage or to dodge the attack and all this kind of stuff. Like, it is really involved. And, I like that. That is one of the things I really like about Mario & Luigi as a kind of this sub-series that came out of the original Super Mario RPG. A little bit more than the other sort of Mario RPG offshoots. But, like, the thing about that is that it makes combat, it is involved, and, like, I think there's a limit on how much you want to be kind of doing it over and over and over again as a result. Like, when it's more casual, it's easier to just kind of, switch your brain off and let it go. When it's like this and, like the battles, they take a little time to load and then it takes a little time to beat them. I mean, they give you more options to kind of speed up how quickly you can beat things, because it isn't just like the special attack type, the brothers attacks, which themselves are, again, like adding another layer of how involved they are to execute those properly and do lots of damage. But I mentioned before, they've introduced this sort of buff system. and you get more buffs that can kind of stack as the game goes on, and in interesting combinations and stuff. As that offers the ability to kind of like clear battles more quickly in different ways that aren't just like getting really good at the same mini games over and over again. So, I think there's some smart things that they've done there to kind of extend the, kind of sustainability and durability of how enjoyable the battle system is. But I do think as a general matter, when it is like that and it's not as sort of casual, you don't want to stretch it too far. And this, does stretch it a bit further than is ideal. Not outright too far for me, because I did, I wouldn't have kept playing it if I wasn't still enjoying it. I've never really been that inclined to just like finish something for the sake of it, but certainly at this stage of my life, like, it's just going to get dropped if I'm not getting anything out of it at this point like that. So, it didn't like threaten, there was no point where it was like getting overstretched to the point where I was going to drop the game. But I do think it got stretched beyond the point that was like optimal. I think just reining it in that little bit more and kind of, making it a snappier experience, it's more, of a fit with the kind of combat that you have here compared with other RPGs in general, or with indeed, specifically other Mario RPGs. But what I did like, even though it does skew a bit younger, is the fact that, some of these later fights have some legitimate teeth to them, nothing like crazy difficult or anything, but, they're doing different things with the kinds of attacks and the ways you counter them. The fact that you've got like fully polygonal graphics now with the, because before on 3DS it was like polygonal environments with sprite characters and stuff. So they could do a certain amount with like perspective changes, but they do more now with like, okay, for different enemy attacks, we'll put the cameras in different places and have different patterns and just vary it up. And like I said, some of the bosses and, sort of event fights that you have down the line, like, you get more sort of challenge, and that puts you more in the place of like, okay, let's really get into what I can do with stacking these different buffs and, the effects. Like, it'll be things like, okay, you can have like something that performs additional actions, essentially. So it's like when you jump on them, you get an extra, just as a standard jump attack in a turn, you get an extra jump in that attack and do more damage. But it kind of has further such effects when combined with other buffs. So it might be like, oh, you have a buff that kind of spreads, like has a kind of area of effect, right, that does like spillover damage to other enemies. And then like you can stack on top of that, well, like this iron ball just falls from the sky and does more damage on top. But if you combine that with the sort of extra sort of action buff, well, then it'll be 2 iron balls that fall on them and all that. So when you kind of actually get some of the more challenging fights, you can really kind of say, okay, what's going to be really useful here in this case? Because with some of the fights, it might be useful to do those things to make them quicker, but you don't really need to. Whereas, later in the game, it's like, no, actually, this is pushing you a little bit more. You don't want to, the attacks are difficult to dodge. So I want to be able to finish this in as many, a few turns as possible, get as much damage done as possible in a turn. Let's really kind of combine these to the best effect. And, they make it nice and kind of user friendly again, because I think basically every fight that you engage with, even if it's just a, typical enemy on the overworld, is like its own checkpoint, right? Like if you do die, to something, it's just like, oh, just replay the battle. It's like, oh crap, I didn't actually save for a while back there, so I've lost some progress. Like, it's like, no, you could just retry the battle, and then you could either, do better and successfully beat the battle, or you could try and flee if it's one of that where you can do that, whatever. So, like, you're never in danger of losing any progress. So you can be a little bit cavalier, take some risks with how you approach the battles, maybe to try and make them go faster and stuff. So there's plenty of smart stuff in here and things that kind of, help the formula that had already been established along. And then there's the whole sort of aspect where it's a little bit different, because Luigi is like more of a sidekick, like he's, more of a computer controlled kind of character in this than he was before, which I guess, maybe some people feel, that's like violating the the nature of the series as it had been established, that Luigi was essentially like completely equal, as and it was this dual character party. But, I feel like it does at least, put some sort of fresh spins on certain things, and gives them the opportunity in sort of dungeons to do some light, like Spirit Track style puzzle sections, where you're kind of cooperating with a character that's somewhat, under the control of the computer, and, but, you can prompt it to do things with the use of the left shoulder button. And so, overall, I would say, it's different, but it adds enough that it justifies its presence over the course of the game and different things they do with it. And it also it makes navigating the environments when they do some more kind of platformy things with it easier, because you don't have to manually, make Mario jump and then make Luigi jump in proper sequence and timing to make a jump, because he'll just do it himself. Like it does, he just make that. I probably liberalized how they could design the platform, the environments, because it isn't so tricky to navigate when you can make him jump on demand, but you don't have to. So he'll just handle it himself. And most of the time that's fine. It's the odd occasion where the AI kind of gets itself in a bit of a pickle, but yeah, that kind of worked for me overall. My only real major criticism would just be, that it seemed like they were under some sort of pressure, whether it was, just from their own ambitions for the game, or whether it was anything, more, for the developers at Acquire, or whether it was Nintendo that had a particular target in mind for how long the game should be. They just overstretched what they had somewhat. And, that's, a little bit of a shame, but I don't think it should necessarily be a deal breaker for, if you're interested in, seeing a kind of next generation Mario and Luigi game, in terms of the aesthetics and some of the kind of places that they've taken the design. I think it could well be still worth investigating. The issue with it, I suppose, as we mentioned before, is that it's somewhat like the third such game in the span of a year, because, you did have Super Mario RPG Remake a year earlier, and then you had the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, some months earlier. So, yeah, I wonder if some people's appetite for this kind of game, even though this is original, it's kind of already been sated with those games, and maybe it'll take them a while to come around to this, or maybe they never will, which I think would be a bit of a shame if that's true. But, might want to keep it in mind for the future if that is the case. I will say, for me, having played all three of those pretty much when they came out, the most enjoyable experience was the Super Mario RPG Remake, and you can probably guess why. It was the snappiest. It goes by like greased lightning compared to Paper Mario Thousand Year Door and this. The battles are just really. I mean, there's a kind of a cost, if you like, associated with that, because it is more simple. It is, quite easy, but it's, just so brisk. Battles are you're in and out so fast compared to other things that have more like loading, or they're more involved, but there's enough there that it's fun. And also, Super Mario RPG has one thing that this Mario and Luigi game uncharacteristically does not have, and that's a Yoko Shimomura soundtrack.
Hey.
So yeah, the music here is good. Absolutely. And very rich instrumentation. It's good stuff. It kind of fits what's going on. I think, it's, so what, on the credits is someone by the name of Sakamoto, I want to say, is the composer, but I'm not familiar with exactly what other things they've done. But the fact is, if it's anyone other than, Yoko Shimomura, it's just not going to be that, that is like an intrinsic part of Mario and Luigi to me, is that sort of personality. You know what I mean? That
right.
That she brings to the original Super Mario RPG and all the Mario and Luigi games. It's just like, if it doesn't feel, it feels a bit like a sort of imitator of its own series as a result. That there's something intrinsic to it that's missing. Not, again, because the music's good, it's not a big deal, but it's still kind of like, if you are somebody that's kind of interested in this because of, how much you've enjoyed the other, Mario and Luigi games with their Shimomura soundtracks, it just, you still miss it a little something, even though what's here is good. Just to finish off, like I said, I would say, don't, if it's something you're not really interested in right now because you've enjoyed other stuff, don't completely sleep on it, because I think, at the right time, it could fit a spot if you kind of, somebody that really enjoys, the kind of battle mechanics and general kind of aesthetic of the Mario and Luigi games, because it's a pretty good exponent of those things.
I'm looking at Hideki Sakamoto's background. Apparently he worked on Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky, which we've talked about on this show, but that was actually part of the music in those games was actually okay. But mostly he's worked outside Nintendo, so that's probably why we haven't run into him. But he did work on Smash Brothers like every other composer in the world.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Japanese composer, it's probably more notable if you didn't contribute at some point.
Man, who did you offend? You didn't even get a Smash Brothers song. Cool. All right. John, you've been gone a while. What have you been up to?
I was playing a lot of Diablo 4 for a while there, but they're at the point now with that game where the stuff that you have to do to grind in that game is just really not interesting to me anymore. So I don't know. I was kind of, for a while there, I had a lot of downtime, right? I was gone for a month up in Canada, and I don't have a whole lot to do up there. So I was kind of looking for a game and kind of bouncing off some stuff. Didn't really want to get involved in any RPG or anything like that. So I came back around to Metroid Prime Remastered, which I seem to, which I don't know, for some reason it just struck a chord with me. Obviously played it a little bit when it came out, came back to it, never finished it. So I started playing that through. I'm at the point where I think I got the gravity suit. So I've played quite a bit of a ways into it. And, obviously it's a great game, but it's funny because when you play that game, it's actually so faithful to the original in a lot of ways that I kind of wish they would have changed it up a little bit. And really, I think the one thing I wish they would have added to it was the ability to fast travel in some way, shape, or form across the map. That would have really, really helped. Some of the backtracking is just miserable, especially when you have to go through some areas that have had the power cut out, and so you have to use a different visor, and you're running through, and Metroids are attacking you, and to do that, you have to change to an ice beam, and then you have to kill them with the ice beam, then hit them with the missiles, and you're doing all this kind of manipulation all at the same time. Really, with nothing, you don't even care about this room that you're in, but some of these rooms are very elaborate, and you have to, go up all the way through, and find an exit right at the very top. And so it's just some of that stuff. You feel like you're like running across the map for 10 minutes when you really wish I just wish there was some sort of limited fast travel in that game. Even added just above and beyond. I understand, like the original game, that's fine. But in the remastered version, if they just would have added that, I think it would have made it more enjoyable, since I've already played it through and beaten it, and I don't care. I don't necessarily want the absolutely vanilla experience of Metroid Prime. But, that being said, game is still incredibly enjoyable. Very fun going through. I think it does do a good job of kind of breadcrumbing you. Like, you just get to the brink of feeling lost and really not knowing what to do next. And then it does give you a hint. Sometimes it gives you a hint a little bit later than I would like. But it's still sort of, okay, hey, there's that. It's usually as simple as, there is this place on the map that you haven't explored. That's probably where you need to go. If there's something, it does a good job of, it gives you a new capability, or gives you a new weapon, or a new suit, or, the ability to do something with your morph ball powers. It does a very good job of just kind of laying down the train tracks in front of you. Like, oh, well, now that you have the spider ball, guess what? There's that one spot where you saw those spider ball tracks. That's probably where you need to go. Most of the time, it's not just going to be, a new power-up. It's usually going to be something that lets you push the story ahead, or at the very least, will get you to a spot where it then gives you a hint and says this is where you need to go. So yeah. So I'm going to keep playing that. Right now, I'm at the point where I think it's told me, it's like I don't remember enough of the original game to really say what the next thing is, but there's an ice frigate or something. It's right by where you land at the very beginning of the game. But that's like the next part that's just opened for me. So yeah, and that's an excellent game to play on the go. I actually, when I landed in LAX, I pulled out my Switch and I had to wait for the shuttle bus to come and get me, it takes a while because it comes on 3-hour intervals. So depending on when you land, you usually have an hour or so just kind of sitting there doing nothing. And so, yeah, I pulled out my Switch and I was just sitting there killing time, running around, getting some new power-ups. So, and it looks great on the OLED screen. So, yeah, very, very happy with that. Other stuff, couple of games that were on sale for PS5. I picked up the Contra Anniversary Collection because why not? I own it on everything else. But that stuff, those collections, all those Konami collections are just dirt cheap now. So I played that a little bit, but the Contra games, I don't know. Some of them they're very difficult, and some of them don't allow you to really have more. You can't just have unlimited lives with them. Like I was playing the original arcade version, and that only lets you die so many times before it ends the game. So. But also picked up.
Yeah, one trick about the what's it called, hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Karen and I played through the Japanese version without understanding what the dialogue was because that one is easier than what we got in North America.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's
it was a rental thing, It was in the grip of that, where it's like, oh god, people are going to be able to beat this in a rental, make it harder with no particular, precise balancing adjustments to make that done in an effective way. It was kind of often done quite crudely. So yeah, I agree. That's the way to play it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating some of the write-ups where. They're saying, because I went through the bonus book, and, and it's exactly that. Some of the ones like, in Japan, you would get, extra levels, things like that I never would have thought, to me, a Contra game is a Contra game is a Contra game. Those games are typically so simple to me. Why would you change them based on, this market versus that market? So, and I think I got this on Steam for incredibly cheap at some point, but I don't remember there being so many games. But it's a pretty packed collection. So I'll keep going with that. And the other thing I picked up too is very, very cheap was Firewatch as well. So I've been playing through that. That game just starts off very grim. And of course that's a very good game. I would almost call that game a walking simulator. Because most of the time you're just walking through the forest, talking to the other lookout person. So yeah, it's just kind of a change of pace game, and also another game where I always wanted to play through it, but a lot of the stuff with games with me, it's timing. If it depends. Like some games I'll bounce off of. I'm almost kind of worried now because I'm playing through Metroid Prime Remastered that when Metroid Prime 4 does come out, who knows, that I'll just be sort of like, I already kind of played something, because I'm sure it will play very similar and look very similar to Metroid Prime Remastered. I can't see it looking leaps and bounds beyond, because Metroid Prime Remastered does look really good. And I was thinking that the other day, I'm like, I bet you the Metroid Prime 4 is probably going to look a lot like this. So I'm hoping that it doesn't kill my interest in playing another Metroid Prime style of game again, because I feel like I may have just come upon the point where I feel like playing a Metroid Prime game again, but I'm satisfying that by playing Metroid Prime Remastered, but we shall see. So,
fair.
But that's it. Yeah, so I'm going to be playing through Metroid Prime. This year, I'm trying to make more of a concerted effort to actually play through games rather than just bouncing and bouncing and bouncing.
Oh, wow.
I really am trying to do that. But yeah.
He's finally growing up, everybody.
Right before your eyes, James. But yeah.
My sad, tired eyes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, look forward to seeing what you complete this year, John.
Yep.
We should create some kind of record of all the games you play. If only there was something we could look at over the course of the year that might be generated through your process of playing games.
There's nothing out there. There's nothing to track games.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
No. And it's nothing that we produce on, like, I don't know, a weekly check-in basis.
No.
To keep track of that either.
Nope. No, we'll just never know. Just be lost.
Yeah.
Lost to the ages.
Yeah. Each week, all memory of the previous week erased.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that actually might be true based on the results of the John Lindemann quiz. So
it might actually be kind of good.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Guillaume.
Yeah?
If you can't create memories, you'll never be bored. Because everything will always be wonderful. Or at least a wonder.
Thanks.
That's not how I remember Memento, but maybe my memory's not that reliable.
It's true, yeah. I mean, if a movie is bad, but you don't remember anything about the movie, you could watch it again, not knowing it's bad. And if it's got logic holes, you won't remember the previous act to see the holes, and you'll always be you'll be pleased with what it's going. So, Guillaume, on that note,
Sure.
You unfortunately can't create memories. I mean, not you particularly. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for all of us, really. So, what games do you remember playing this week, or since we last spoke?
Yeah, no. So, what a strange intro. I played.
I've entered my philosophical arc. It's fine.
Right. So I played 1,000 times Resist, which yes, that's the title. That's how you say it. Apparently,
okay.
I checked an interview with the developer, and that's how they talked about it. So 1,000 times Resist. But if you're looking for this game, if you're typing it in your browser, it's 1000x Resist, like all in one word. So,
yes.
Yeah, look for that. This is a game that got a lot of buzz, especially these days, like, with, like, the top games of the year lists. I remember that this game did not break the, like, top 20 or top 50 games on Steam when it released. I can't remember what else it was against, but, like, I remember at least, like, two other kind of high-profile, like indies were coming out, and both of them like did really well. 1,000 times Resist did not do so well. I remember this because that's when I bought it. I bought this game when it released because I thought, well, I'm going to support the little guy who like getting really good reviews, but is not selling as well as it should. And then I proceeded to ignore it for 7 months. So yay me. I could have been at the forefront of, like, you know, like talking about this game, hyping it up, but instead I'm just one of those people who's only now getting around to it because so many people say that it's so fucking good. So 1,000 times Resist is so fucking good. I've only played it for, 3 chapters out of 10. This is a quote-unquote adventure game. It's almost, like a... No, I guess I can't call it just a visual novel because it's more involved than that. There are puzzles, there are things to find, there's a game world that you're exploring, but it is essentially reading a lot of dialogue. So this is a game where it's convoluted. Like the game starts you out with like your character apparently assassinates another character. You haven't met either of these characters before, so you don't know the context, you don't know what's happening. And then it shows you what happened before. And it turns out that you are some sort of clone. This set in the future. A clone of someone called the All-Mother, and you are called the Watcher. And this is nothing is really well explained at the beginning, and I'm still fuzzy on, like what everything entails. But like right away, like it's very confusing. There is someone else called the Fixer. Now, all of you people look the same. You're all like the Watcher, the Fixer are clones of the All-Mother, but they're color-coded and they clearly have a function that's, you can kind of guess at what it is from what they're called. The Fixer is some sort of engineer. The Watcher I'm a little bit more fuzzy about. It seems like her role is to enter into a communion with the All-Mother to explore her memories. For what purpose? I don't know. The game starts out like you are exploring her memories, and then it takes you back to the interior future of 2047, when the All-Mother was but a teenager in a high school. You are exploring this high school. Everything looks very fucked up. Like you are seeing it in the timeline of, like, I guess the game's present, the far future, where everything is fucked up, and like aliens called the Occupants have conquered the planet, and they did that by bringing a pandemic with them. And this is so much harder than I thought it would be. So
yeah,
the world of 2047 is when this pandemic strikes, and so you can toggle between the kind of the game's present, which is the far future. I think 400, like probably like the year 2447. So you can toggle between 2447 and 2047 when the events took place. And your character, the Watcher, is exploring this high school and has like so many questions about so many things of the world that, as we know it, like apparently she's never eaten anything. Like she finds the whole process disgusting. Like what they ingest and then they expel. Like what is this crap?
Literally.
Yeah. And also like she as you go through the high school, and like you like there's a lot of funny observations about like how she interprets our world and the normal world, I guess, and what we do. Eventually, like you witness the event, like the pandemic that happened. Like apparently, like one of the first places where the pandemic broke was your high school dance. And you go there and like it's this really stylish scene where like you only see the silhouettes of your classmates that seem to be flung from a central point, as if like there had been an explosion in the middle of the gym where the dance is taking place. And you're just like walking through that. It's like there's like the light in the background just like casting shadows all over the walls. And I guess what I'm trying to convey here is that this game is extremely stylish, which makes up for maybe like perhaps a lack of graphical prowess. Like this game looks really good. There are many scenes where I'm kind of picking my jaw from the floor. It is like a very good looking game, and it is almost impossible to explain the story, but like the game does a much better job of than it would seem from my recounting it, of like kind of introducing you to this world and then telling you its story, which eventually like I played through a scene where I was remembering like the aftermath of like this pandemic. And like the fact is that the All-Mother used to be this teenager called Iris, and she has immunity from this contagion, and so like so the whole of chapter 3 is basically like you are in her apartment, like packing your bags. And as you're packing the bag, you go back and forth in that memory and like previous memories, and it tells you of her story as like a Chinese immigrant in Vancouver, and like her parents who immigrated from Hong Kong and who have like all this trauma from fighting the... Oh god, I lost the plot. You know, like in Hong Kong, what did they fight? I need to study my history and my.
All right, which era are we talking about? Sorry.
Well, they would have been like towards like these days, you know, like
now. Oh, they
because
fought,
like
they
in
fought
47.
They fought the extension of the Chinese governing system into Hong Kong, specifically the restrictions on the ability to vote for the president of their choice. China picks the candidates, and they only pick China-friendly ones, and restrictions on their rights to free speech.
Wow, I knew I could count on you. Thank you. So like they have immigrated to Canada. They had Iris, a child, and so like a lot of the scenes that you're seeing from her childhood, or like this, you witness the intergenerational trauma basically in like the life of an immigrant who, you know, like the conflicted parents. Like you've got the mom who's like, I don't understand our child. You know, she's always sleeping. Like, doesn't she want to do something? Like, she's so lazy, etc. And you've got the dad who's like, yeah, but you know, like remember us? Like we only wanted to be kids, and we were denied that. Like we had to fight. Like we didn't have that freedom. If she wants to sleep, let her sleep. And so, you know, like there's that narrative going on. There's like the whole narrative of like you are a second generation immigrant, right? But there's this girl, Jiao, who's, as she says herself, like she's heard others refer to her as like fresh off the boat. So she's she just arrived. She's a little bit more awkward. She latches on to Iris in high school because she finds her very cool. She might also be in love with her. But like she, you know, latches onto her, and Iris hangs out with her, but also kind of pushes her away. And like there's all this story playing out that you're discovering. This is a very dense game with a lot to say about, you know, real issues, real experiences, but all coded in this bonkers sci-fi world where I think what I've seen were the occupants, like they're these giants, and their aspect remind me of something out of like Evangelion, basically. This is kind of a very spectacular game, despite the fact that it's probably made with a very small budget. The voice acting is really good. I'm really surprised by the quality of it. Like the actors really nail all the little like inflections, all the little kind of the emotions that they're trying to convey. Like that's the whole job of an actor. But I mean, on a budget, I don't know how you get actors that are this good. So I'm really happy with it. I'm 3 chapters in. Unfortunately, I haven't played in a while because this is, as I said, like a game that is dense. Like it has a lot to say. I'm really enjoying what I'm, you know, reading and hearing, but I feel like I need to put time aside for it. Like I played through chapters 2 and 3 like in one go, and it takes a while to complete a chapter, and I feel like I can't just quit a chapter halfway through. Like, there's too much of a risk of, like, if you stop at the wrong point, like, maybe, like, you're not going to get the full impact of, like, what that chapter was all about. And so I feel like I need to put it aside for, when I can set aside time for this game. And so as a result, I haven't played it in a while, and I feel bad about that, because, like, I always feel like, like, I can't give it the proper attention that it deserves right now. I guess I'm going to play some more Indiana Jones, and then I end up playing, Indiana Jones for a full 2 hours, because that
That'll
game,
happen.
like, you can just pick it up and start playing, but then, like, there's this other thing on the map that's not too far. Maybe I can go get that as well, and then, like, like, you just kind of get addicted, and you're like, well, I can just play a little bit more, and then you end up playing more than you thought. So, yeah, so this is all on me, basically. Like, I should be finishing 1000 times Resist, but I need to be in the proper mood for that, I guess. But it is really good so far. Like, I'm really impressed, and it's kind of exactly the kind of game that I was looking for. Like, just like Venba was about kind of the, like, the immigrant experience for someone like an Indian who immigrated in Toronto. Like, this is like a Canadian story, of immigration. I kind of enjoy getting, like, these these stories that are specific, and also, like, set in my own country, I guess. Like, it gives you a different perspective than the narratives of immigration elsewhere, right? Like, the U.S. cultural behemoth that it is, like, it's kind of, you hear a lot of U.S. stories, and so, like, it kind of feels good to get something different, a little bit more local, a little bit more specific to my country. Anyway, so yeah, so I'll be probably talking more about this game in the next few weeks, if I can get around to actually playing some more chapters.
Cool. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us this week. Greg, what is our music to conclude this philosophical exploration of the value of memory?
Yes. Well, I mean, what better than something that's it's a sort of a recurring memory? We already dealt with this earlier on, but the return of DKC Returns is upon us. It'll be a matter of a few days after this podcast goes up, but the HD version will be with us, which, yeah, as you already mentioned, James, doesn't seem to be doing anything drastic with the content of the game. It's basically just, putting it to higher resolution and, incorporating the bonus levels that were in the 3D version, and pretty much calling it a day. Doesn't seem to be any particular revision to the soundtrack either. I mean, the instrument quality was mostly fine, but it probably, would be, certainly you could see with Tropical Freeze, like, that has better instrument quality generally, a few years later on Wii U. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think they're doing anything to the music. I guess we'll see when the reviews come out definitively on that. But the soundtrack as it was quite a lot of fun. So in this case, with Retro kind of, doing what was a pretty straight up revival of the Super Nintendo, DKC games, the first one in particular. You've got Kenji Yamamoto from the Metroid Prime games, handling a lot of the material from the first DKC in particular. So you've got a lot of rearrangements of classic songs, from recognizable songs from those games. And there's lots of fun in that area, but I've gone with something that's a bit more particular to this game, right? That isn't just a kind of a remix of other DKC stuff. And in fact, this is called Bobbing Basalt, because it's from the Volcano world. And basically, this is much more in the vein of, like, if you were imagining what would the composer of Metroid Prime do with Donkey Kong Country, this is it. Like, because it's like you've got that sort of trademark synth voice from Metroid Prime, and indeed I think it, like, you have some sort of downsample kind of version of it in Zero Mission, and of course the sequels and Prime Pinball and probably Prime Hunters or anything else. So it's a very, like, signature Prime element. The percussion as well, like, could be right in a Metroid, but then you've got, like, the brass, which is very much like, no, that would never be a Metroid. That's a Donkey Kong thing. So yeah, it's a really fun driving song that really does live up to that promise of your Metroid meets DK.
Cool. All right. Well, on that, it is time for us to wrap the show up. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.